Everyone knows that Peppa Pig is one of the most well-known children's shows in the world.
Peppa Pig.
But did you know there's a dark secret behind the children's school teacher? Reflection in the mirror. One moment that made this very evident was in the YouTube video for the song Madame Gazelle Had a Castle, set at Halloween. In it, at a certain moment when Peppa goes to play with Madame Gazelle, there's a mirror in the background. But in it, we only see Peppa's reflection, as if she's alone. But right in front of her was her teacher. In that same scene, we see Peppa herself getting scared when she realizes only she has a reflection. Madame Gazelle herself looks directly at the little pig through the mirror, proving she doesn't mind others knowing she doesn't appear in the mirror. And if you know a bit about vampires, you know one of their traits is not having any reflection in any object, because only beings with souls can be seen in mirrors, something vampires lack. That was just one of the times we didn't see Madame Gazelle's reflection, and one of the pieces of evidence that there really is something very different about this character, as you'll understand better. Nighttime habits. Another moment in the show that is another indication that Peppa Pig's teacher has at least a dark origin is noticed in the episode where the pig volunteers to take care of Madame Gazelle's 2 guinea pigs. The pig will take care of Ginger and Brian while the teacher goes on vacation and travels, maybe to her hometown, which we'll talk about shortly. When Peppa's parents arrive, the teacher shows them a list of things they must not forget to do while she's away. And one of the things that stands out on this list is that it's necessary to brush the fur of the 2 guinea pigs several times, with one of these brushings being exactly in the middle of the night. But who, after all, in their right mind would wake up in the middle of the night to brush guinea pigs? Unless you're a nocturnal being who doesn't sleep, and the night is your natural habitat, like all vampires that exist. That would explain very well why Madame Gazelle does this every night, since for her, this would be completely natural, as she probably never sleeps. Which would also explain why she uses blue eyeshadow to hide her dark circles that make it clear the children's teacher never sleeps, and spends every night awake. After all, it's not in her vampiric nature to rest. That would surely explain many things. And, as you noticed, today we'll show everything about the origin of this intriguing character, so let's put #Gazelle in the comments as a reference to Peppa Pig's mysterious teacher. Age of Madame Gazelle. Another thing that strongly supports the argument that Peppa Pig's teacher has a darker nature is related to her age. Although not apparent, Madame Gazelle seems to be a person hundreds of years old, which would never be possible for a common living being. One of the facts that proves this point happens in the episode where everyone gathers to say goodbye to the school teacher when they imagine she's leaving forever. When Peppa Pig's father hears the news, he and his wife say it makes sense since Madame Gazelle was the educator responsible for both him and Peppa and George's mother. And let's face it, although it's possible to notice that the character really has aged a few more years, physically, she doesn't seem to have aged to the point where she seems to be someone's grandmother, as we can see in the cases of Grandpa Pig and Grandpa Dog, who have white beards and mustaches from the effects of age. Meanwhile, Madame Gazelle is practically identical to her version that taught all the moms and dads in the show. This is only possible because vampires never age. They remain with the same appearance as when they became vampires forever. And this is not the only evidence of the very ancient age of the schoolteacher. Christmas tree. As strange as it may seem, vampires even celebrate Christmas. At least, Madame Gazelle does, and this leads us to another piece of evidence that confirms the vampire identity of the schoolteacher. When Peppa and her family visit the teacher's house, she herself says that the house started to show defects so long ago that she can't even remember anymore. And when they go to the other side of the house, they come across a gigantic Christmas tree that is the same height as the 4-story house of Madame Gazelle. The teacher planted the tree when it was practically still a sapling. But how long does a Christmas tree need to reach the height of 12 meters, which is exactly the height of a 4-story building? Research shows that this takes almost 40 years. In other words, between the time Madame Gazelle planted that sapling and the day Peppa and her family went to the teacher's house, 4 decades have passed. The most impressive detail of all this is that when this happened, Madame Gazelle was already an adult and a widow, because we can see the same portrait of the teacher's husband in that Christmas 40 years ago and today on the wall of the house, which means she can practically be considered an immortal being, just like vampires. Moreover, when Mr. Bull identifies that there are bats in the tree, Madame Gazelle once again says they remind her of her old country once again. A country where there are many, many bats? Where could it be? Reflection in the mirror second time. As we mentioned at the beginning, not having a reflection is the same as not having a soul, so vampires don't appear in mirrors or photographs. And Madame Gazelle's absence of reflection is evident in other moments besides the one we mentioned in this video, such as in Peppa Pig's Halloween special in the 6th season. In it, we see Susie, who is the protagonist's best friend, talking to Madame Gazelle and showing her vampire costume to the teacher. At this moment, just like what happened with Peppa in the first example, there's absolutely no reflection of the character in the mirror behind her. Only Susie appears, as if she were completely alone. Moreover, when Susie says she's playing being a vampire, Madame Gazelle sighs and states that those words bring her many memories of her hometown.
A vampire? That brings back memories of the old country.
But what hometown is this that reminds her of vampires? The only answer would be Transylvania, Dracula's land. Of course, this is in addition to the fact that she indeed has no reflection, which certainly wasn't an editing error, but something deliberately placed in the episode to confirm the theory that Madame Gazelle is a vampire. So, if you're already convinced that there really is a vampire among the Peppa Pig characters, we deserve your subscription, don't you think? And if you're not convinced yet, the next evidence will surely do it. Abnormal characteristics. Another quite sinister aspect that proves we indeed have a creature of the shadows as part of the Peppa Pig character group is the fact that the show makes it clear in several moments that the laws of physics and nature don't apply very well to Madame Gazelle. For example, in one of the episodes, the teacher goes to play with the children, and she manages to hit the ball with such force that it simply cracks the roof of the school.
Madame Gazelle is good at batting.
You hit it 1,000,000 miles!
Now, think with me. Is it normal for an old lady over 100 years old to have the ability to do such a feat? Honestly, that's impossible, unless this person has tremendous strength, as vampires usually do. Another occasion where we see the school teacher doing something that completely contradicts what any ordinary person would do occurs in the episode Beach and Snow. In it, we see the moms, along with Madame Gazelle, having the brilliant idea of going to the beach on a day when the snow is high enough to cover Daddy Pig. The teacher tells everyone they can go into the sea even with the snow since it's not frozen. Then she dives into the icy water as if it's nothing. She even says the water is wonderful. That's certainly something no ordinary person could do. Mommy Pig even tried, but she got so cold that she practically came out immediately. Meanwhile, Madame Gazelle was there, calmly in that water with a temperature close to 0 since there was only snow that day. Everyone knows that vampires are cold-blooded creatures, so ice and icy water for them are things that don't change their sensation of cold or heat, exactly as we see Peppa Pig's teacher reacting. Vampire Gazelle. From everything we've seen so far, we can really say that Madame Gazelle is a creature completely different from any other in the Peppa Pig show. There isn't just one indication that she has powers and conditions very different from the others, but several. And, incredibly, perhaps this was done deliberately by the creators of the show. This is because all the characters in Peppa Pig are inspired by animals that actually exist, such as bulls, rhinoceroses, rabbits, and even elephants. And few people know, but there actually is a species of deer called the vampire gazelle. The deer species has 2 huge canine teeth that stand out, although it doesn't have horns, as is the case with Madame Gazelle. Despite its frightening appearance, it's an animal that doesn't pose any danger to anyone. So it may really be that the idea of the show was to create this similar version among the Peppa Pig characters, since although Madame Gazelle most likely is a vampire, we can see that she's a good teacher, and a character that doesn't represent any kind of malice. Quite the opposite. That's why she's ideal for representing someone with mystical powers, like not having her reflection in the mirror or hitting balls at incredible distances with absurd strength. All of these are things that don't harm anyone, they just prove that Madame Gazelle really is a different creature, as she's certainly a vampire gazelle. We're leaving 2 very cool videos for you to check out now. Choose one of the 2 and keep having fun with us here.